Hi, it's been a couple days since I've read for you. I am going to read from, we're picking up on Thursday, May the 16th, 2019. I figured it's good for me to read. I have an interview coming up, and I know that it's better if I move my mouth and say a few words and whatnot before I do an interview, because I'm sitting here all in my head otherwise. This is called I Am Not a Protected Veteran. I've been doing a lot of applications. Topping off with, as I do this entire month, I think, or quite a bit anyway, an epigraph by John Ashbery. Need house, sleep with men, come after, not too bad. Need? Can't say no to that. But perhaps more importantly is strong desire. Yes, I'm back in the isolation tank, and this week, not so much fiending, dating, intimacy, none whatsoever for over a year now, nor obsessing over the why of this fact, but instead mulling over what a reminder it is that my life is so precisely upside down, so opposite. I've had moments, but the past 5 years now are a new map, one that has been impossible for me to decipher. A flat earth, but not how that antiquated notion must mean to today's trendy flat earthers. Absurd. Many days the question is no longer about how to get that, i.e. a life back, but will I ever get a life again? Par for the course, of course, is that the upsides of living in the isolation chamber are also the downsides. The freedom of joblessly setting one's hours, alas, the decision whether or not to utilize this freedom to search for employment, which, from my observations, isn't the most common choice among my neighbors here in this transitional housing apartment building. It's home. I can say that with a certain pride. I try, desperately, especially of late, the optimist's approach, which thankfully somehow still seems to exist most often. Nevertheless, this freedom becomes a prison unto itself. To stay idle is often too easy, especially after what got me here in the first place, not to speak for most folks, but I would most certainly get it if that were the overwhelming reason for such lethargy. But I choose the job of searching for a job, an odd yet sometimes too easy to understand why difficult process, meaning simply I never had difficulty finding a job before. They always tended to just land in my lap, something I obviously took for granted and makes prevailing times even more awkward. But as for my paid job, you can roll your eyes if you'd like. Many of you would, even if I have in the past when one would make this distinguishing point. When I am working unusual amounts of overtime, for example, or have very mind-numbing projects with overly early deadlines, when I should be too exhausted for any real work afterwards, that's when I find myself producing more art, more poetry, more of this attempt of engagement, more of this attempt to understand you, more of this attempt to find those who might possibly begin to get a glimpse into my own soul, with all of its illogical Geminic layers, might possibly be interested in doing so, more of this attempt to make the things that have made me make myself, and have made me love myself, and have helped me in my discovery of a stable value system, as evolving as it is, this magical sculpting that takes place right in front of my eyes as I turn page after page, which has also gifted me with most of the people whom I can earnestly call hero, and many whom I can call friend. My other job, when I have one, I appreciate very much. It is a career that has known its successes too, of which I am proud, and one that I do well. But there is no way to explain how much I love my real work. Sure, there's a problematic need to prove myself, to be listened to. Even in the isolation tank, I am way too loud, I know. To be, even if in some small way, understood. It is also work that can turn into a means of engagement, or find you a true friend, that rarity that can give someone the joy you have in some way from what you do, the inspiration, which is maybe the most important thing. I cannot say that I am certain that I am not alone in feeling or desiring these things from the work which I call my real job. However, for me, the ultimate hope is that my words and their architecture become a means of engagement. Not simply in one direction, but that there is rapport. Hearts and minds having a conversation with the me, even if just the pages of me. Growth, most always in a positive way, occurs primarily from engagement, speaking, listening, passion, adjustment. It's also a way to meet people. Anyone with whom I can connect on a level that is so rare that it seems in retrospect impossible to do. A hope. Oh, I've believed. I've felt such a connection. But as often as I can recall these moments, in the end, I turned out to be sadly mistaken, sometimes tragically so. But life is full of disappointment for me on this subject. I spend much of my life living for it nonetheless, and haven't lost that hope. If anything, it expands. Not logical, but worth noting. So all one can do is try to make good out of whatever you're given, and give back in a better way than you've gotten. In the case of the tough stuff anyway, I try not to be a tragedy and have nightmares of what seems to me would be the most horrible tragedy of all, which for me would be coming to a horrible end in the midst of a time such as the one I have just lived through, am still living through. The only way to avoid it, at best, is to remain as happy as possible, and often as possible. As happy as possible, as often as possible. And I am generally very lucky to be able to do just that. Or I hope to get back to that point. In percentages, I certainly have the wonderful stuff on my side. Anyway, you've gotten this far with my foibles, or you have arrived here, and let's say that you just might be interested in knowing more of the same. Perhaps I am too hopeful, but such a thing could happen, seems to, on occasion. Well, if so, even in a generally slight way, I say stay tuned here to find out what happens, whether tragic or comic. If you just arrive, feel free to back up and catch up. It is your decision, and if you dig, it would certainly tickle me pink. Or at least such a fantastical notion does already, as in I'm pink. And know this, there will not be a sequel once it's over, so I bid you an adieu for today, and plan to be back again in a day or two.